now that you say they're small, I got it. Now,
Yeah, they will eat them. I had 10 babies that my neighbor cat ate 10, all 10 of them.
Man, I'm just
Got about 5 one day, about
Just
5
enough.
would see because I usually go in there at night and would take them away from the chickens, but the chickens do such a good job and they sit on them and keep them warm all the time. So
all right.
anyway, and sometimes they be mad, they don't want you to touch them. They come at you like this, they spread out their wings.
Peck at you.
No, they come straight at your legs. I said, okay, mess with your babies.
All right, y'all ready to get going?
Yes, sir.
All right. Cool. I was about to say good morning. It's no longer good morning.
Good afternoon. It's
I-
still good. It's afternoon.
Yeah, I have no concept of time anymore. All right, so today we are going to discuss fruits. I forgot you were here. So we're going to talk about fruit trees, kind of the bigger picture of things. We'll talk a little bit about variety. We're going to cover kind of all the core basics and some things that you need to factor in when you're making a decision about what you might want to plant so you can choose the right variety. What we will not talk about today, we're not going to dive really, really deep into disease or problems or pruning. Like we're going to I'm going to circle back to that in middle of summer, and we'll cover those topics. So, entice you to come back and join me again if you get some value out of something today. But yeah, so let's dive in. So how many of you have fruit trees or shrubs or anything at home already? Okay. How many of you are successful in getting what you want out of it so far?
I just planted it.
Okay.
The birds eating it.
Yeah, that's part of it,
I planted it for the birds.
Yeah. So the first thing that we need to talk about today is we're going to talk about two very important things that are vital for making a decision about what we choose to plant. First one is going to be what we call chill hours. So chill hours does not apply to all fruits. It applies to any type of fruit that goes truly dormant. So what I mean is like when we hit wintertime, our trees are going to turn to sticks. We're going to lose all our leaves, just like some of our well-established shade trees. And we're going to go dormant. We're going to go to sleep, hibernate, and then we're going to come back next spring, grow all new foliage, flower, fruit, or whatever our life cycle entails. But in the world of fruit trees, we need chill hours, and that is the amount of temperatures between 32 and 45 degrees, cumulative in a year. Or not in a year, I say like in a year's worth of dormancy. So we need to get those cold hours. Does it get cold here?
It does for a
February.
few days.
Yeah, for a handful of days.
Yeah, but not a whole month in a row. It may be like a week or
Yeah,
3
or
days.
one day at a time.
Yeah.
So all that matters. Every one of those hours, whether it's 5 in a day, 2 in a day, none in a day, they all have to add up. And each variety that's out there needs a cumulative amount of chill hours to be able to flower and set fruit the next season. So if we go out and we take a look at wanting to plant, for example, a peach tree, if we go out and we buy a variety that has 800 chill hours, we'll never see a fruit as long as we're alive on that tree. That tree will grow, it might flower, it might do everything that you think it's supposed to, but it leads you to believe you're doing something wrong. But in turn, you haven't. It's just simply the variety is not suited for the area in which that we've planted it in. So we want to ideally target trees that are going to shoot between 250 to 400 chill hours. So
How do you find that information out? You just research it on Google? When you go buy a tree?
I'm going to get to that. So
Oh, okay.
yes,
I'm sorry.
yes, no, that's cool. Yeah, no.
Good question. Good question.
This is a great question. So if we plant a variety again that has more chill hours than our area provides, it's going to bloom late, irregularly, or not at all, and it's not going to set fruit. Now, this doesn't necessarily apply to us, but I'm telling you this just for knowledge. If we live somewhere where we got lots of cold hours, and let's say we planted a variety that is suited for here, somewhere north where it has a lot of chill hours, then we might trick that tree into blooming too early, and then you get the kind of the same problem, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's always good to have trees that are going to be suited for the chill hours and the locale in which you're planting them in. So you think like 250 hours, that's 10 plus days of 32 to 45 degree weather. That doesn't seem like a lot, but here, some years, that's a lot. So we really want to factor in and try to get the lowest chill hours we can. That's going to provide a resilient plant. Next, we need to consider fertility. So not all plants are self-fertile. So, you know, I was listening to you guys when you guys were talking about like just vegetable gardening. So, for instance, a tomato plant is a self-fertile plant. The flower contains both male and female parts, and it can pollinate itself. It does not require insect pollination.
Really?
So, same thing applies in fruit trees. We need to either have two varieties which are going to bloom at the same time and pollinate each other, or we need a self-fertile variety. So that's important information to know, because if we plant one that's not self-fertile, same thing applies as not having enough chill hours. Lots of growth, beautiful tree, not getting what we want out of it. The majority of people in this area are going to plant self-fertile varieties of mostly larger trees, because one of the number one reasons why you might want to do that is like, how many of you has enough room for two 25-foot diameter apple trees in your yard? You know, some might. Like I could probably plant that, but then I wouldn't be able to plant anything else fruit-wise. Yeah. So maximizing your space, because I know nobody in here wants just one kind of fruit. Like I don't mean that's just fruit-eating people, like they don't like all, but they like an array of things that speak to them. So you want to have room to be able to put different types. So we want to maximize our space and maximize productivity. Another reason why you might want a self-fertile variety is because if we had two trees and they both produced a bumper crop, what in the world are you going to do with them all? They're all going to come at the same time. Like, what's somebody going to do with 50 apples at one time on a tree? Like the average person, not everyone. Some people are prepared. Some people love to preserve and do things. But today, in a fast-moving world, young people like me, there's no way I would have time to maintain that many. So if I have two non-self-fertile varieties and I get 100, 150 apples or peaches,
You need people to take them.
and it's hard. It is hard to give away produce and fruit. You know, it depends. Like,
Well, they don't want to come get it. They
so
want
yeah.
you to pick it and bring it to
Yep.
them.
So you know, that's something that has never changed from back whenever I remember my grandfather growing a huge garden.
Yeah.
It was like a struggle to get rid of things, and you know, in a timely fashion. By the time you find somebody who wants it, it's either no good or they come asking when you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
So the same thing applies here. Thinking about what are we going to do with what we're actually going to grow when the time comes. Because if you don't have a plan, I talk about this all the time, if you don't have a plan for what you're going to do with what you're growing, then you become unsuccessful in a different mindset. Like, you know, I spent all this time and energy and then I wasted it all. So how do we find this information out? Well, you know, most of the time we would go and like look at the tag. But unfortunately, fruit growers don't find chill hours or fertility to be important information to put on the tags, because I've yet to find in my life a tag that has that information on it. Now, some of the trees will tell you like cold hardiness, size, which is important stuff. You know, we need to know that, but that doesn't tell us the two things that I'm telling you are more important, because if we don't have the right variety, we're not going to be successful. Any questions about fertility or chill hours? All right, cool. All right, so now we're going to talk about general requirements. So fortunately enough, I find that most things that we grow as like home gardeners, if we're growing for fruits and vegetables, and even on ornamental type things, we really need kind of the same key core components. So number one, we need soil, and we need good soil. We live in an area with crummy soil. It's just the nature of the type of soil we have. Most plants want a sandy loam, something that is not too loose, but where roots can grow, where oxygen and water can move and hold at a happy medium. Clay, on the other hand, holds lots of moisture, but nutrients are not readily available in it. And also it can tend to create really, really overly damp conditions, and you can get kind of wet feet on a lot of things, and plants don't typically like that. Unless we're growing like marsh-like plants or things that can handle it. And that's mostly ornamental stuff. So, but there's also kind of, if we want good soil, we all know we can go and turn around and we can buy good soil, but that also creates a problem. So if we today go home and one of you, say you buy this berry, and we go home, we dig a hole, and we buy the best quality soil we can get, and we start filling the hole, we slap that guy in there, we cover it up, we plant it. That's all great. There's a couple things that are probably going to happen though. If we get moderate rain, we'll probably be just fine. If we get the typical Southeast Texas, like 5-inch of rain when one was forecasted, and we dig that hole with that loose soil in there, all that water is going to go to the path of least resistance. And we talk about how, how many of your yard, when it rains really heavy, all the water runs off instead of soak in?
Mine don't. They're so clean.
Some do, but a lot, we have a lot of like sheet, like runoff, because the water cannot move through it fast enough. Well, when we get a big rain, you got loose soil in there, you're going to fill that up, and you're going to have good moisture, but it's going to stay damp longer because that water can't move through that clay that's now at the bottom. So unlike a lot of people, I always recommend that you plant your trees, and any plant for that matter, except when we're dealing like with vegetables and such, back into the native soil in which you're planting it in. Does that mean you shouldn't amend it? No, you should. But we want to be really careful. We don't want to put a bunch of loose, good stuff right in the bottom and create that soup bowl. Now, we do want to amend the soil. If we're dealing with clay soil, we can take drainage amendments like expanded shell, and we can put it into our hole. We can begin to mix it into that soil we brought out and are putting back in, so that over time we're breaking the bond of those clay particles, and we end up changing our soil structure. Here we have to look at the long game, and we got to be focused about changing the way the soil is to make it better, because it is proven we can have a loamy soil here with the right components going in, but it does not happen in a month, it doesn't happen in a year, it happens over an extended period of time with intentional inputs and practices. Now we also, if we planted this thing into really, really good soil, what can happen depending on when we're planting, let's say we're putting it out right now, not the most ideal time as we're getting into the hot time, but people do it all the time. We put it into some great soil, the plant like, oh yeah, I'm really excited. It starts growing, starts getting really happy, and then all of a sudden it hits that clay at the bottom and the sides. And then it's like, whoa. Yeah. Now you've shocked your plant, and then you factor that in with the oncoming heat, then the plant's going to struggle to get established because it thought that it was going to do really well, and now it just kind of sits there. It's like, I tell this people all the time when we're talking about plants, it's like right now, let's imagine it's 100 degrees outside first day, and you showed up here, and then you're sitting in here, you're comfortable, and then I'm like, all right, we're going outside, and we can't come back in. You're going to be uncomfortable, not happy, and you're not going to enjoy yourself. So you think plants are the same way. They want to be comfortable. They want to acclimate just like we do. So next, if we have got it planted, I usually will like to put a little bit of compost across the top. Compost is also going to help us improve that soil structure over a long period of time. And then next, we got to talk about mulch. Now we can have fruit trees in a yard, just like our ornamental trees that don't have mulch around them. And that's perfectly okay. But when we're talking about planting a young tree, mulch becomes incredibly important. So we take this small tree, we plant it in the ground by removing the grass and giving us like a maybe 2-3 foot ring around it. We're giving it some room. We're taking away the competitive plants around it, but then we add mulch on top of the compost and the soil that we've already put in. What this is going to do, it's going to help keep moisture and soil temperature more highly regulated, and that's going to help with root development. So it's proven that if you have mulch soil, that your root development is going to be increased over unmulched soil. Now, as the tree matures and gets bigger, it might be unrealistic, or maybe we don't have it in a bed. Maybe we want the grass to grow up to it, and that's fine. We just want to make sure we have a plan to protect the bark at the trunk, you know, if you are trimming, because it's really easy to get things hung up on.
Is that a peach? What kind?
That's actually an apple.
That's an
So,
apple.
yep.
Okay.
So watering, we get all these crazy rains, but honestly, most of the time for fruit trees, we don't really need to do a whole lot of supplemental watering. We get enough moisture most of the time for most trees to be perfectly fine. Now, we need to supplement when we plant. When we first put plants into the ground, especially like larger growing plants, we're usually going to water daily for a couple weeks, getting root establishment, you know, getting moisture to soak in to promote the roots to start growing and get out there. Then once that happens, once it gets established, we're typically only going to need to supplement watering when we get into dry spells, or if it's just really, really getting hot, maybe we are getting rain, but sometimes it's still not enough. We want to do 1 to 2 deep waterings a week. It's very important that we do deep, infrequent waterings. If anybody's experienced this, like just trying to keep a nice lawn, you know, if you go out there and you water every day for a short amount of time, the grass is still always going to struggle because the water is not promoting deep root growth. And you're also not getting accessibility to nutrients. So then you have water-starved plants, and then you have nutrient-starved plants. So deep watering will help with the health of a plant overall and promote better roots. I'm going to skip to the bottom one, just so I don't get myself off track here. Some of these trees we need to make sure we have spacing. Some we can grow closer together. So something we could grow close together, we could grow citrus. Citrus could really be grown to any shape and size you want. If I could go home, I could go buy 5 or 10 of these pink lemons, and I could grow them and form them into a hedgerow if I really wanted to. So I don't have to let all these trees become the mature size in which the tag says. Now, with smaller sizes and different types of upkeep techniques, it might reduce my amount of fruit at the end of the season, but it all depends on what you want to do. Not everybody, again, has the space. Has anybody ever seen like apples or pears grown what they call a espalier? It's where they basically train. They would pick one trunk, and then they'll cut and make cuts so that they get runners,
Oh, yeah.
and they'll grow that
Yeah, same.
symmetrical.
I've seen it. And what do you call that? That was
Espalier or espalier.
Okay.
It's a technique where you can grow up against a flat
Yep,
surface.
Seen that.
So it's a way you can utilize space. So I bring that up just to show you, like, there's all kinds of things that you can do to mimic or fit something into a space that you have. You don't have to just let it go all hog wild, like, you know, it's designed to do.
It's easier to pick your fruit if you don't let it get so
Yeah,
tall.
yeah.
You can trim back.
But one of the things about spacing, when we get into like apples, peaches, pears, they're prone to disease and whatnot. So we need to make sure we have airflow. So if we have things crammed too close together, then we're going to be more disease prone. And diseases move by moisture. They can move by pruning. So making sure that plenty of air can get up there, making sure that we have like a lifted canopy so that air can move up and under, and also making sure spacing between branches. If you have like a really, really dense canopy of a mature tree, then air is not going to move through it. It's just going to move around it, up underneath, but that moisture and humidity is going to trap in there, and it's a perfect breeding ground for fungal disease. So spacing, super important. Lastly, we're going to talk about frost or freeze protection. Most of these fruits up here need no protection whatsoever. Berries, apples, pears, plums, most of these are going to take 0 to 10 degree temperatures. So they don't need, they're designed to go dormant. They can grow in much colder temperatures and climates than what we have here. So we don't necessarily have to worry about that. Like my berries, they turn to sticks. They look like they're dead in the winter. They come back every year. I don't worry about them. You sure are talkative today. That's okay. But when we talk about like cold protection, we're talking about evergreens like citrus and tropicals, avocados, bananas, citrus. They're tropical plants, so cold is not native to their original climates, so we need to be able to protect them. Ideally, we can protect them, number one, by choosing the proper place to plant them. If I'm going to plant a citrus tree, what side of the house should I plant them on? Anybody have any ideas? South, absolutely. How many times do you find, how many times do you think I see people come in and like, I killed another tree, and then I start asking them where they planted it. Where did they plant it? Planted it on the north. Or they planted it, even if they can't plant it on the south, they planted it somewhere where it is in the wide open, instead of like moving it closer to a structure and providing some form of a windbreak. It massively changes your success rate. So south facing is ideal for citrus or tropicals, or having some kind of a windbreak, because we all know, I'm sure we've all been outside when it's cold. The wind is the coldest part of a cold snap, the wind chill, and that's what actually happens. Freezing wind will freeze the trunk. When we're talking about frost protection or freeze protection, I'm not too worried about up here, because we haven't started budding or blooming yet. So I'm not worried about like losing my buds. I'm just worried about the trunk, because without the trunk I have no tree, or I have no limbs. But I'm even more concerned about this union right here, the graft union. So most of your citrus nowadays are grafted. They're grafted to a different type of rootstock, and that's where you get your cold hardiness. So this particular one here this one might be Flying Dragon, which is what we used to like the most. It is like a dwarf citrus rootstock. The tree will only get about 10 by 10, so very squatty, very manageable, much easier to protect. Whereas over here on this pink lemon, we've got a trifoliate type rootstock. The tree can still get 15 to 20 foot tall, pretty large. So no way we're going to protect that thing at maturity. So when we're looking at wintertime, we want to focus all of our energy on protecting this. We can do pipe insulation, wrap it around there just like you wrap your pipes. We're breaking the wind. When the trees are young, we can take like this size, for instance, because once I put it in the ground, it's not really that big. Go to the hardware store and get me some PVC pipe, good schedule 40, like 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and I can make me some hoops. And I can make me a little X over the top of my tree, and then I can use a frost cloth. And what that does is that keeps that frost cloth off the limbs, because when you have cold transfers through cloth and if you put plastic, cold transfers through plastic even more. People think that the plastic will stop the wind better, but then it can't breathe, and then the cold stays trapped in there, and then as the plastic flaps, it actually transfers cool faster. So when you cover them,
I've been there, but I used pool noodles this last time.
yeah, that worked.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's interesting about the coal, because if we don't have enough coal and you've got a tree that needs more coal, maybe they can add to it depending.
See, I don't even know.
Well, but
whatever.
it's all
just a thought.
But that's only on your citrus, though.
Right, yeah.
Which
Yeah.
Which the citrus doesn't need any cold hours.
Oh,
that's
other plants that
yeah.
need coal, like
Yep.
I got a peach and an apple tree that I've had for 2 years, and I haven't gotten anything. They did bloom this year, the peach tree did, but then that little cold snap came and all the bud fell off.
Yeah. But it's important, if you're gonna like cover it when they're young, you cover it with a cloth that's breathable. Make sure your cloth goes all the way to the ground, because you need to trap in that heat. That radiant heat that's coming from the soil is going to create a temperature variance. A lot of people, you drive around and you see they wrapped it right here.
Yeah.
Like, you might as well have just left it wide open because it's doing absolutely nothing. So you're holding that heat
I
in.
put old sheets that I saved and I put the sheet over them. And close them with clothespin, but they don't seem to work that well.
Sheets aren't thick enough. Like they don't. And frost cloth is like it doesn't seem like it's much more, but it's drastically different.
Okay.
You know, and it's okay for moisture to be able to permeate through it too. It doesn't matter. The moisture is not what's going to get this. It's
I bought some frost bags for trees
Yeah.
this last year.
Okay, you bought some off of Amazon?
Yes, I think so.
yeah. I mean, like
That seemed to help.
at the end of the day, I tell people, you know, you could use blankets, but keep it off the plant.
Yes.
When the tree gets big, don't worry. You can't protect the whole canopy.
I got a huge lemon and I can't protect it.
Funniest thing I ever saw in protecting citrus, one of my best friends, like this is like 15 years ago, I went to his house, it was cold, and went over there to spend the evening, and it was going to freeze that night. He had taken his insulated flannel and slid it over the top, and he stuffed it full of hay and pine straw, just whatever he could find, and he created essentially a jacket to break the wind. So your methods don't have to be conventional;
Right.
they just have to work.
Yeah.
And so keep that in mind. You don't have to have some crazy idea. All you're doing is trying to keep the wind off the trunk.
Okay.
So yes, you can do. You know, people put like incandescent Christmas lights in there because they do create heat. That's perfectly fine. Just make sure your plug's not on the ground because it's not. You know.
I still have mine and haven't gotten rid of it for that same reason. I
You
don't
know,
use 'em.
yeah, because LEDs don't
Yeah.
they don't work for doing that. I've actually seen people trial, and I don't know the success rate, transferring basically like thermal mass energy, like by taking like jugs of water and placing them around the base. And then when the water freezes, it's like, think about when we got the snow recently, or more recent. Things didn't die like they did whenever it's like freezing, because snow, it gets cold, and when it melts quickly, it produces mass amounts of heat. So you're actually warming up the soil and the adjacent plants. So you're transferring energy. I've seen people do like big drums around mature plants next to them, and I don't know their success rate, but there's all kinds of unconventional ways, and you just have to find
Yeah.
you know what combination or maybe one sole thing that works for you.
When do I need to worry about doing that?
You-
Protecting.
Just whenever, like right before, like if I have small trees like citrus, I'm gonna go ahead and have my system kind of created,
Right.
but I'm not gonna put my blankets or covers on until the moment of the cold weather. And you don't want to keep things covered for extended periods of time, even with frost blankets. Once the temperatures rise back up, you need to get them off there and let the plant breathe. Let that humidity and moisture move out.
Is it just freezing temperatures, like 32 and below?
Yep.
If it gets to 32, it's like for sure gonna die.
I mean, maybe. It also depends upon variety, and that's kind of like when we talk about frost protection. As I move up a little bit longer, I'll talk about like how some of the varieties will impact the cold hardiness, especially with citrus. So other general care things, if we're while we're not going to dive too much into pruning today, you can dormant prune a lot of your true dormant trees during December through February before they start budding out. It's where you can make cuts and improve airflow for the upcoming season. So a lot of these types of fruits, they're going to fruit on new wood or old wood, and that's why we're not talking about that today, because they're all different. So you know, that's your time to get ready for the upcoming bloom season, so that you make sure that you have the proper wood or growth on a plant to actually provide you fruit for the upcoming season. Now on citrus, I typically would only prune citrus maybe in the spring, after it's right before they start blooming. I don't like to make cuts on a cold hardy plant in the wintertime, because you create a wound, and a wound makes something more cold susceptible. In spring, we'll start to fertilize. Fertilization can go one of two ways. You can either fertilize with traditional, like synthetic-based fertilizers, man-made fertilizers, and depending on the type of tree, it may tell you to only fertilize once a year for things like peaches and pears and apples. Citrus will tell you 2 to 3 times a year, pecans twice. If you take an organic or natural approach, I'll usually fertilize 3 times a year. I'll do early spring, March, then I'll do it midsummer and late summer because I'm focused on soil. I'm not focused on the plant. I'm feeding my soil, providing nutrients and abundance for the soil. Then the trees have accessibility to what they might need whenever they're going through their growth and fruiting and flowering stages. In the summertime, that's really going to be the main time where I'm going to be focused and paying attention to water again. So I'm going to be supplemental watering weekly, every other week, depending on how the rain is happening. This year we're predicted with the El Nino ordeal to maybe be a pretty dry summer. There's no telling. So, you kind of got to watch and just pay attention. Summertime is also a time when you start having things begin to put on fruit on a mature tree. We need to also consider looking at how much fruit is on this tree. Do we need to thin, or do we need to do some supplemental pruning to prevent limb breakage? It is not uncommon for a fruit tree to overproduce. Citrus is definitely the one to highlight here. Many people will grow and they'll have a really good crop one year, and then they'll either have no crop or a very minimal crop the next year, and then they go through this every other year cycle. And a lot of times that's because the plant goes into recovery one season, and then they put on a huge crop, and that's because that plant is maybe particularly overproducing each season. So we could come in and we can say, hey, like maybe this tree at maturity has 100 fruit on it. Maybe it's got more than that. Maybe I need to remove some. And sometimes you'll see trees begin to drop fruit on their own because it knows that it can't support all those fruit, so it will alleviate some on its own. So don't be scared to pull off of. The one that I would say I never worry about berries. Berries tend to be super able to support whatever grows on them, but when we're dealing with like peaches, pears, apples, citrus, it's something that you could keep in mind. Figs, I don't think I really see figs overproducing. We had a lady come in yesterday and brought us, I think, like 35 apples from her tree, and those are the ones that she pulled off early that were not quite ripe. That they were still good, they were a little tart, but she pulled them off so the remaining umpteen million she had would actually get bigger and sweeter. So it's about, you have to weigh out what it is that you want. Do you want a bunch of like mediocre fruit, or do you want a smaller amount of like really high quality sweet fruit? So think about that when you're out there looking or observing what's happening when things are starting to set fruit. We move into fall time. Fall time, we're probably going to have finished harvesting berries. We're going to probably have finished harvesting things like figs, apples, and some of our stone fruits. That's whenever we're going to start seeing pecans become ripened. That's when we're going to start seeing our citrus ripen and ready. It's also the time, even though it's not necessarily a fruit tree, but strawberries are grown more of as an annual. If you're replacing strawberries, fall time is the best time to plant them. If they overwinter, they will produce better and be far more established as a berry. And they're so much easier if you do it that way than trying to get them to grow and fruit all in the same season. So mine that I planted last spring, that they produced a little bit. We overwintered them. When they grew this season, the foliage was about 5 times the size of the previous year because the roots were so well established, and the berry production was way better, way more abundant. And we only have a handful of them. So, but it's one that if you like in the berry world, plant them in the fall. Most people only plant them in the spring because that's whenever they're abundantly available in a nursery, because growers are going to put things out for availability when the mass amount of people are coming. So fall is also the time to fertilize. Like, even though pecans and citrus are relatively somewhat like related in the way they're taken care of, we typically will fertilize pecans again after we've harvested. We fertilize them when the buds are breaking in the spring, and we'll fertilize them after we finish the harvest. Any questions about care?
Yeah, I had a couple. So you just do like the little pellet fertilizer, or does it need liquid like what you do for your other vegetables and stuff?
I primarily just do like dry fertilizer, or like a slow release fertilizer. You absolutely could do a liquid, but again, liquids are just supplemental. So maybe whenever you're seeing a lot of blooms, you could give a little supplementation, but it's not 100% necessary, because you'd have to supply a lot of liquid for a tree to be able to push it everywhere. Putting 1 or 2 gallons around a tree isn't going to be helpful. Whereas if you were putting a lot of it out there, which we're less likely to do, so I mean, if sometimes I'll do like my berries, because they're small. They're not big plants. They're more like a small shrub. I can handle doing those, but trees, I tend to not use a liquid.
And then I like kind of halfway caught on to, you said the lady pulled off her apples, like they had already formed, and that's when she pulled them?
Yeah, they were actually pretty good size, but she could have pulled them she could have pulled them when they were a little bitty, and that probably would have been more ideal. But maybe at the time, it just depends on when she caught it. But they were still good. They're just they hadn't brought out their sweetness yet. They were tart, but if you like a tart apple, hey, can't beat it. So now we're going to kind of look at we're briefly going to kind of skim over some varieties that might be useful to you in our specific area. So in stone fruits, ideally we're going to be targeting varieties that are 150 to 400 chill hours. Most of the ones that you'll find that are recommended and do pretty well are going to fall around the 250 range. So ideally, if you find something around 250, you're going to be pretty good all the time. 400, most of the time will still produce yearly, but depending on the season, you could push the envelope here. On peaches, there's a handful of varieties that do really well nowadays compared to the ones that whenever I first started in this world, they're just not common like used to. We had like the Alberta, I think, and maybe the Sam Houston. The Sam Houston's still out there. It's a little bit on the spectrum of chill hours right at the top, and it's a decent variety. But now with a lot of the cultivars, we've got the Tropic Beauty, the Tropic Snow. Those are excellent. And then the Florida series, Florida King, Florida Queen, Florida Home. If it'll fruit in Florida, probably going to fruit here. Similar climate. But those, you'll find a lot of the varieties now have like very similar names, and there's minimal differences in plant size, maybe fruit taste. But those are some great options, and most of these are going to be self-fertile. Plums, the Methley plum is probably the most commonly grown that will do well here. The Santa Rosa is kind of like the older time variety, but it still performs pretty well. Plums are not everybody loves a plum, so we don't see a whole lot of those, but I would say the Methley would be my choice out of the two that we see.
I always wondered which one would be the best, because I always love plum jelly.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I probably broke on it.
Yeah, I see that the Methley tends to be the one that we find people gravitate to more. Nectarines I have up here. I've never grown a nectarine, but it was, I've learned as of recent that it is possible. There are some varieties now that are low enough chill hours. Now, I don't know if there's any other like elemental issues that might make it difficult, but I have seen or heard people piddling with them, in and around here. And some of those people could be in areas that are maybe just a smidge north of here. So that could change, because even like you think about if you're above I-10, you're gonna get a handful more cold hours than you will right here. So One thing to note about your stone fruits is that a lot of stone fruits don't have really, really long lifespans. They're not like, it's not like planting an oak tree or even like something as simple as a crepe myrtle. It's not gonna stay alive forever. You'll find a lot of them are gonna have the majority of their life in a 10 to 12 year span. That doesn't mean they couldn't live longer, but you tend to begin to see problems happen, or you start seeing decline, maybe dieback happening on these plants. But they are relatively fast growing in a sense. So I mean, it's one that you could replace if you needed. So apples are the one that like nobody thinks they can grow here. Every time they're like, you can grow apple here? Yes, but I will preface that by saying you cannot grow a red apple here. So if it depends on the type of apple that you like, so you may not be able to grow the kind that you like, but there are apples that will grow here, and they are mostly going to be golden apples. So the Anna and the Dorset are really, really good producing varieties. They got the perfect amount of chill hours, but you need both of them to cross-pollinate. Now this guy here, this is the kind that the lady brought me yesterday. She bought a tree for me, I don't even remember how many years ago. It might have been 8 or 10 years ago. And she says it produces a bumper crop every year. So this is the Einsheimer. It is a self-pollinating or self-fertile variety. It is an Israeli cultivar, so came from, who knows how many eons ago, came from Israel. It is well suited for our climate. It will produce a very good stand, and if you just happen to have room for it, you could cross-pollinate with your Dorset or Anna and get even more out of it. So some self-fertile varieties, you can increase your yield by having a pollinator still.
Texas A&M did some. I went to Los Naples out toward West Texas, about Porterville, I guess, in that area, and Texas A&M did some planting of trees, apple trees, and that was about 10 years ago since I've been there. So it's I know they're having some success there.
Yeah.
With that. And then in Kerrville, I found somebody was growing Asian pears, which are they look more like apples.
Yep.
Like, wow, and they're really sweet because I asked somebody at HB, hey, do you sell a lot of these? Like, no. I was like, oh, these are really good, what have you. But anyway,
That's like
didn't want to change subjects.
people are scared to try things that they're not accustomed to, and that's kind of like, that's why I think that's a lot why people don't think you can grow apples here, because like when you do see somebody growing an apple here, it's not the kind that you're, it's not the cultivar you're used to.
Right.
So, but if you, and people think, oh, like, well, if it's a slightly tart apple, a slightly tart homegrown apple is not going to be the same as the one that you got in the grocery store. The flavors are going to be so much more well-rounded, just as being because it's fresh. Pears are hands down to me the toughest fruit in all of Southeast Texas, and that really comes down to the fact that pears are very disease prone. There's a disease that a lot of pears will get called fire blight. Fire blight is a non-curable disease, so once you have it, it's there, nothing you can do. A lot of diseases can stay living in the soil, as we know, like if we're vegetable growers, like if you've ever gotten blight on tomatoes or nightshade plants, you could plant next year in the same spot and that same issue could happen. So having varieties that are disease resistant on pears is incredibly important. The 3 varieties that will meet chill hours and that have some decent resistance are going to be the Orient and the Moonglow. Those are the 2 cross-pollinated varieties, but you'll find like the Kiefer or the Kefir pear is what most people are going to go with and what we tend to sell the most of, because it is self-fertile. And one thing too with pears, not every pear is good for fresh eating. So like if you want fresh eating pears, some of the varieties that we can grow here may only really be good for like canning and preserving. So that's kind of a unique thing. Not all pears do well for fresh eating. Citrus. The citrus is the favorite, amongst most people for growing home fruits, but it can be the most difficult. We kind of covered some of the reasons why, like make sure you've got site selection picked out, and secondly, make sure you have a plan to protect it before you ever plant it. There is a ladder of cold hardiness when it comes to citrus. They are not all created equal. The Satsuma mandarin is definitely always going to be at the top range of your cold hardiness. So you can find certain cultivars that will, even within that family, are more cold hardy than others. A lot of your Japanese cultivars like the Owari, there's the Jishan, they have a pretty decent cold hardiness when they're grafted, probably maybe into the mid-20s, but we easily get below that every single year at a really hard cold snap. So we're seeing the Arctic frost become the go-to variety because once mature, it can take down to the mid-teens.
I just planted one of
Yep.
those in March.
Now you got to get it to maturity, so cold hardiness only comes at maturity for everything. And even if you had even a dormant tree and you planted it, yes, it's cold hardy down to 0 or 10 degrees, but in that first season, if we get some unprecedented cold snap, you could lose a tree, if it's while it's establishing. Your lemons and limes are always a popular choice, but they hold at the bottom of the spectrum in cold hardiness. They're the first ones to go, and they're the most replanted thing. Lemon, I probably sell more lemons than anything because people are always replanting. They love them, but they're hard. Now the Meyer lemon is now grafted, so you get a little bit of cold hardiness where way back when your lemons and limes typically weren't grafted, so you didn't get that extra cold hardiness. So they've now perfected that technique on those, and you get that extra cold hardiness. Your standard types of oranges, God, there's so many of them. Got like a red navel orange here. It's really, really popular. You got blood oranges. There's like Washington navels. There's like your easy pills. This guy is a great substitute if you, I'm not going to say it's just like it, but if you like small, like easy or no pill citrus, like your kumquat. Yeah. Kumquats are popular, but they're very hard to come by.
They sure are.
We can only buy 10 trees when we order from the growers.
Really?
Every time. We're limited. It has been for like multiple years running. I don't know exactly why, but the Kishu mandarin, it is kind of harder to find. We only have one grower that does these. This used to be one of the most popular things I sold every year. It's a little, it's super easy to peel. I think you can still eat them almost whole. Excellent choice. There's so many varieties of oranges, and I'm not I would say one's better. And most people that want an orange go with the Satsuma when it really comes down to it, because I'd rather take my chances with cold hardiness and have that similar flavor. Grapefruit, absolutely doable here. The Rio Red and the Ruby Red are your main cultivars in Texas. Just grapefruit's not for everybody. There's a white grapefruit you can get here, the Oro Blanco, and then there's one more. It's grapefruit-esque, the Pomelo. It's not a true grapefruit, but it has grapefruit qualities, and it's a cross between like a grapefruit and something else. But I'm just drawing a blank. The biggest thing to know about your again freeze strategy, make sure you have a grafted tree. Make sure you're protecting that graft, because if anybody's ever lost a tree or they think they have, and then it begins to grow back, the rootstock will have completely different foliage. It will typically have long thorns, and it will grow like a weed. But if it were to fruit, it's going to be a very, very sour orange, and it's not going to be a favorable.
Mine never fruited, but I didn't never cut it down, but it grows like a weed.
Yeah. And it's real squiggly growth a lot of times. So.
I just left it out there.
Tropicals and subtropical things that you can grow, like figs, figs are super easy. This is a perfect climate for a fig, as long as it doesn't stay too wet in the root zone. Just make sure you plant it somewhere where it's not going to get a bunch of water shed onto it. Needs just even, consistent moisture. I would say overall, they're probably one of the more carefree options you could plant, but they are, to me, the most difficult to protect from wildlife, because they just
You
get,
gotta know it.
yeah. They're just
cinder block wall around mine, about 3 feet high, and then
just Yeah, like ours, we had the birds. It was just so I would have to climb in there to pick it. And then the birds are just so abundant. It's just part of the trade-off
If you put out
sometimes.
some bird feeders, that'll help.
Yeah, like I said, people don't think that like water sources and like alternative feeding. My whole garden and fruit area is underneath trees, so I have squirrels, I have birds. I keep water and food out most of the times, and very rarely do we have something get lost. And if we do, it's a clear understanding it's part of it.
Now they'll eat them mulberries I got.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay, that's okay.
I don't eat them anyway. I just like looking at them.
I put tea stakes around it inside the cinder blocks. It's 3 feet high, and then I put wrap around the fencing, and then bird netting.
Yeah,
Because whatever.
You got
it
you.
is, but-
It's whatever you're capable of doing to protect
Yeah,
it. There's a slew of varieties of figs. The Celeste is typically the most commonly known amongst people.
And that turkey, whatever they call it.
Yeah, the brown turkey,
Brown
the Black Mission is probably one of our favorite. The Texas Everbearing is said to be able to fruit more than one time in a season. I don't find, and Miss Donna doesn't find, that it does as well as some of the others here.
Big too?
Yep. And then the LSU figs, Louisiana, this is the Louisiana of Texas, so if it does good in LSU, it's probably going to do just fine here. Such similar climate. Pomegranates are pretty simple overall. There is a Texas native pomegranate that will grow real well. From a commercial standpoint, the wonderful pomegranate is what you see a lot of times from nursery grown stock. They're pretty easy. Overall, I don't think that they're a difficult one. And a lot of them are self-fertile. I've got one of the Texas ones that's one of the other guy I know from YouTube, the Texas Garden guy, gave me at the last event we did. So I'm small, but I'm gonna try it and see what happens with it. Avocado. Avocado is on my list of typically not worth your time. But I bring it up because people want to know about it, because people are interested in it, because avocados are expensive. I buy a lot of avocados for my cafe, so I know they're pricey. And once you cut them open, they don't last. So, but you typically, if you're going to grow an avocado, you can't grow it from a seed. You can, but avocados can take 10 plus years to fruit or produce the first time. So grafted cultivars are going to bring you cold tolerance, which is important because it is a tropical plant. Secondly, a grafted variety is going to give you a quicker time to production. You usually are going to see fruit on it way faster. You're not going to be waiting a decade to get something off of it. But the biggest thing to know about avocados is avocados are delicate. We saw from a talk I went to, like this probably 15 years ago at this point, they did a trial where they were planting fruit trees all across Houston and all kinds of public spaces, just trying to, put something usable and just, they're trialing. So they did a bunch of avocados. And what they found is whenever in their trial, that when they pulled them out of the pot, they were damaging the roots, the main feeder roots, by pulling them out of the pot. Because most of the time, let's be real, we go home and pull the pot off. Even if you break it up, you can pull it off, but they found that they damaged all of the roots, and when they planted them, they died fairly quickly. Then what they also found is that when they planted them in the ground, they died within a year. They lost the majority of them. So they went back and they did another run, and what they found was that when they cut the pot off and left the roots kind of undisturbed and just gently maybe agitate the root ball a little bit, that the success rate elevated up. But then what they did is they took it out of the pot, they cleared a spot on the ground, and they literally set it on top of the ground, and they created a mound. Because avocados, again, they're tropical. So you think of tropical is a wet area, but it likes water on its own terms. Tropical soil is different. The environment is made to handle that kind of water. So when we get these like monsoon-like rains and you plant a tropical plant in a clay bowl, then it drowns and it rots. So what they found is when they mounded them, it helped with the success rate, and they even went as far as to do like batter boards around it. And they said even after a year they had to remove those because it would retain too much moisture. And they kind of like water on their own terms, so they don't need a lot of like watering. They might need minimal watering for establishment, but after that they can be kind of left alone. So, you know, I tell you that's not to discourage you. If you want to try it, but no, avocados are going to be a labor of love. It's not going to be easy. Most people are not successful, but you could also plant bananas. There are bananas that will fruit here. You are not going to be guaranteed to get a fruiting crop every single year. We got like a new variety this year. I think it's like the Truly Tiny. It's like a smaller dwarf cultivar that is supposed to fruit. You can do like there's like a dwarf red. There's the ice cream banana, which I think will still fruit in this zone and climate. But again, it's not going to be all the time. One thing that bananas love organic matter. You could literally plant them next to a compost pile or even create a compost pit. And this is something that I learned in permaculture. Was they create what they call a banana circle. Banana and papayas love the same thing. They dig a recessed pit, and that's where they throw all of like their green waste, their brown waste, and they basically create like this little mini compost pile. And whenever the season's over, you know, if the banana dies back or the foliage, they just chop it and drop it, and all that organic matter breaks down, and those bananas grow their roots into that zone, and they're feeding off of it. I mean, because if you've ever had a banana tree, even a non-fruiting type, can you kill it? No. Like, it doesn't matter how many times it dies to the ground, it never runs out of energy. So just, you know, they're fun, you know, but there's some, you know, even for ornamental purposes, I love the way this one looks because it's got like it's really, really pretty foliage. That's called I think it's called the Truly Tiny banana.
Okay, it's pretty.
It's a real compact variety. You know, it's cold hardy to, I think, most bananas are cold hardy to like 20 or so, 30 degrees. I mean, they'll freeze back, but, you know, like I said, they come back.
Oh, tell my dad about the banana papaya because when we lived in Callan down south, I was like, oh, that explains a lot now.
Yeah.
No, my aunt lives in that house now. It's like, oh, how about that? Anyway, sorry.
Oh, you're good. One that I don't have up here, you can grow persimmons. Persimmons do really well here. Persimmons are native to a lot of like the East Texas and just Texas in general. There's the native persimmon. One thing about persimmons to keep in mind is that not all persimmons are created equal. Most of your cultivated varieties are Japanese persimmons. You have like your fuyu, which is I think a non-astringent persimmon. Some persimmons can be eaten only when they're ripe. Some can be eaten when they're like not quite ripe. There's astringent and non-astringent. There's like the hayachi and there's the fuyu. The fuyu is the one that most people like because it's easier eating. But
I don't like them.
persimmons are expensive to buy trees because the propagation success rate is very low. They're all grafted, and that's why if you ever go buy a persimmon tree, they're at the top tier of like price, just because they're hard to cultivate. Berries, I would say are some of the easiest. Blueberries, blackberries, super simple. Blueberries, they need acidity. So if you're a rose grower or azalea grower, if you like acid-loving plants, you treat them very similar. You know, you want acidic soil. You can mulch them with like pine mulch or acid-based mulches. You can feed them a little different because if they don't get that acidity, they're not going to get the right nutrients, and they're not gonna thrive. Blueberries are really, really high in antioxidants, so they're really good for you. Up until maybe, like for us, up until maybe 2 years ago, we only ever carried what they called rabbit eye blueberries. So with rabbit eyes, you have to have two varieties. You need a pollinator. Which when you're dealing with like something that's going to make like a 6-foot shrub, that's doable. You know, you could do that in a landscape. But rabbit eye species, Premier, Climax, Tiff Blue, Brightwell, gotta have 2 species.
What kind is that one?
This is what we got left here. This is the last of the Mohicans. This is the only one I got left. So
It doesn't need a.
he needs a pollinator. He just doesn't have a friend anymore at the nursery, so
Okay, so
he's the only one till we get more. Now you can also buy what we call southern high bush. They're used to the just northern high bush. Southern high bush has a wide array of like self-pollinating varieties. You can do the Biloxi. There's the emerald. There's one more I'm drawing. The pink lemonade is real popular right now. So those are easy varieties where you can have maybe 1 species. At home, we personally grow a variety called, it's a Southern Living variety called Hello Darlin'. It's a dwarf, so it only gets about this tall, and it'll produce like, in 3 years, it'll produce 3 to 5 pints per bush. So not as much as a bigger variety, but I'm growing them in a ornamental bed that's the size of this table, like, or the width of this table along a sidewalk, where I didn't want to grow ornamental things. I wanted something that was useful, so I found a perfect variety that could fit that space where this would have been like in the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Blackberries. Blackberries are also really, really simple. You think about there's native blackberries and briars growing all over the place, so the climate is perfect for them. You'll find like the Freedom, the Primark Freedom. This is like a Sweet Arc. These are Arkansas cultivars that have been created by the University of Arkansas over the years. So they give you like bigger, sweeter, more juicy berries. You know, and that's the difference between like native species. Native species are good. They might actually have more nutrition in them, but what you buy has been bred for taste and for productivity. So a lot of your Indian names like the Osage, the Arapaho, Natchez, Ochita, some of those, if you look them up, their chill hours are kind of high. We find that they tend to still do okay here and most of the time produce. And you'll find that like your thornless varieties of the old time are going to be a little less prolific than some of the old time thorned varieties. Thorn varieties always produce more, but like now with these new cultivars, they do real well. We have some of the Osage, I think, which is a self-fertile variety, and they're small. We have them next to our blueberries. They are loaded. One thing with these blackberries, though, you know, blackberries are not a climbing plant; they're a cane. So you need something like a trellis or a support to keep them off the ground, or you'll be like me, where they're just everywhere.
I can't plant them next to a fence. Mine is planted next to a fence.
Yeah. Yep, just something for them to like go onto, because they're going to regrow year after year. That's the one thing about like this branch here that has these on there, or any other one that has fruit. This branch is going to get pruned off because this branch will no longer do anything for me. It's going to turn brown, and then the new canes that are still green at the end of the season are going to be the canes for next year's production. So strawberries we kind of already touched on. Somehow I skipped ahead there. You know, kind of an annual, but still very popular. Plant them in the fall. You'll do so much better.
I've never had any fortune with strawberries.
Oh, it's
I waste my time buying them.
I got it down now for the most part. So got it down. You know, you can come to my house and you can see my wife's little pink mesh bags that she thrifted from somewhere over all the strawberries, because like we tend to have a lot of snails because of the moisture content, because we're in shade a lot of the times. So I put the little bags over them, like 1 or 2 strawberries in each one, keeps stuff from eating them, and when they turn red, I go out there and I harvest them. It's a little bit of a pain, you know. And
You
people.
can use Tool too.
Yep.
Tool, and you can buy it by
Yeah.
bulk,
Yeah.
That's yeah.
and it costs you $10, like on eBay.
I think we got
like
I think like 50 of these bags for like. We don't have a bunch of plants, so it worked out well. 'Cause, But it's like somebody told me there you could just do it cheaper with like a pan and beer. I'm like, I don't know when the last time we went to the grocery store is, but beer is not really, it's not cheap, and that's like cumbersome. My stuff is really densely planted. I don't have room for like,
Yeah, mine's.
you know, it will work, but it doesn't work for me. Lastly on the list here, we have grapes. So your traditional table grapes are not really going to be well suited for the humid climate, just like some of the other things. They're going to be prone to Pierce's disease, which is very prominent in a lot of common like wine and table grapes. There are some varieties that will do well here. There's like I think it's the Blanc du Bois. There's a winery in Winnie. They have Blanc du Bois growing, and they actually successfully grow them and make wine. The rest of their wines their stuff is imported from other, like Fredericksburg or other areas where they can grow the kinds they need to make what they want. But you can grow them here.
Muscadines do good. I got muscadines.
Muscadines are not all created equal. Some of them are terrible tasting. Some require pollinators. So that's another thing, like they take a lot of space. The Carlos, Cowart, and Noble are all self-fertile. There's the,
Cut them back. They take a lot of space.
oh yeah.
Every year they get bigger more and more. They take a lot of
I had
space.
no idea how much room they needed, and I put it in a corner. And we gotta cut it back, it's probably about 12 years.
Yeah.
But it's all full of birds, though. I'm too tired to pick them.
Yeah, get 'em all.
Yeah, they help.
Yeah, they muscadines make a lot too, but you gotta wait till they purple to eat them because they be
Yeah.
sour. And
Yep.
They make your lips itch.
Yeah.
Do you have a question, Karen?
I was just wondering I've never had a muscadine before, so.
So like some muscadines are not, like muscadines get a bad rap because most people have probably tried them, have probably tried varieties which are not the best for eating. There are a lot of good cultivars out of there, and some of there's cultivars better than these. These are the ones that are probably more commonly available, but there's some varieties out there that you could order in from, you know, online. There's a guy I know that Daniel Reed, he grows a lot. He's got like some big trellis systems he does, and he grows some unique varieties that are very, very tasty. So you know, what you can get readily available around here is maybe not always the best tasting. So keep that in mind. You know, sometimes we can't get what we want. But muscadines they're well suited. There's wild muscadine all over the place. So you know it can handle the climate, it can handle the disease pressure, it's resistant. Biggest thing is you got to have lots of support, and it requires lots of pruning. So it's not not an easy crop.
It's not a fair weather plant.
No, it's kind of like the avocado in a way. If you really have to want to do it if you want it. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on nuts because there's only one nut that's actually worth a darn to grow here, and that's the pecan. And even the pecan, unless you want to plant a pecan tree and want to wait for, you know, 7-10 years to get production, you know, I probably should have planted it when I was in my 20s if I really wanted one. But pecans are also a labor of love because they require lots of nutritional inputs. How many of you have driven around here and seen a pecan that you've seen your whole life and it looks like complete garbage now? It's falling apart. They're all over.
One in my yard.
They're all over. And that's because you look at the elemental factors here. We have lots of soil compaction. They need lots of like minerals to like zinc is really important for pecans. We could have an abundance of zinc, but if we're dry or we're too wet, we're washing nutrients away. So if we're not constantly supplying the nutrients, it can be difficult to keep a healthy tree. So you see them far and far less planted now, mostly because people don't have the patience to wait, you know.
Yeah.
And,
People would plant pecan trees and stuff, and they would expect their kids to get
yeah, and it's,
pecan.
you know, but if you were going to plant some, your Indian names like the Pawnee and the Caddo make really good quality nuts. Your pecans are typically going to be grafted as well. The desirable used to be the one that we found to be the most popular because it made a nice large pecan. But pecan trees are kind of pricey. You know, they're just kind of like the persimmon. They're
I can dig them up out of my yard. I need to sell them.
yeah.
I just chopped one down yesterday. It was growing.
Now, as far as all your other nuts go, Are there other nuts that maybe would grow here with like chill hour wise? Maybe so. But the problem with most nuts that arises is it's not suited for high humidity. So you think about, why do we grow things like almonds in California where there's absolutely zero water?
Yeah.
Like they have to bring in water to grow these trees. But it's all about that consistency of temperature and humidity. So it's cheaper for them to do that than it is to grow them in an area that's plentiful in water, but full of disease-prone weather. So that's one of the main reasons why you don't see nuts. You know, they need a different type of climate than what we get here. So you're ideally not going to be able to grow them.
How about the peanuts grow here?
Actually, I was going to say that yes, you can theoretically grow peanuts here, but peanuts grow like potatoes. They grow under the ground.
Okay.
So people don't think of that. You think of nuts growing on a tree.
Yeah.
They grow on a plant, and
You gotta dig them up.
you got to dig them up. You know, we used to sell Spanish peanut seeds forever and ever and ever. Now we can't get them anymore. I think they are somewhat prone to some soil diseases, but you could theoretically grow peanuts here. So, lastly, if I had to take a pick of some things that I feel are fairly easy to grow, Satsuma is going to be at the top of my list, you know, because of popularity. When I look at the grand big picture, people want citrus. It's pretty hardy. Choose a good variety. A Wario is my old-time favorite. Now I'd replace that with Arctic Frost. You have to excuse I didn't update my handouts this year. Figs, the Celeste fig, or really any fig for that matter, super simple, low care, easy to deal with. If you're wanting stone fruits, you know, a good low chill peach, or, you know, be brave and try an apple. That's my next want, is to plant an apple.
Cut down a pear tree, so I'm not putting that.
Yeah, you know, and if you are a pear lover, you know, the Kiefer pear, because we always get asked for pears, I feel it's one of the most resilient, dependable, and self-fertile, brings the disease resistance, and that's my spiel. So,
Now, the apple tree like that one, it's gotta have a mate, a pair.
this one does not. This one is self-fertile.
What is the name of it?
Einsheimer.
Einsheimer.
Sounds German to me,
Yeah.
but
I
it's
had one, my son cut it down.
really,
A self-fertile?
Mm-hmm, the Einsheimer.
Einsheimer.
Yep. That's-
And I planted it, and it was growing, it was producing, and my son got tired of mowing around it.
oh
Yeah,
damn.
that's what they do. I tell
Because
you.
I would have the most beautiful apple tree in my backyard.
Lord.
That's what they do
grew
when
for
they
the
mow.
shade
If you don't-
and for the fruit.
If you don't put something around it, cut it down, and when they weedy, they hit the trunk, tear it up.
What other questions we got today?
When should I plant? So here's my dilemma. When it gets real hot out there, I just kind of don't want to go out there and water anything.
So
I'm gonna lose my passion, and I'm thinking maybe I should just go ahead and plant instead of wait until fall.
if I were going to plant trees, ideally fall is one of the best times. Now, people tend to not want to plant things like citrus in the fall because they're worried about the cold. But my take is that if I plant it in the spring, and even if it establishes well in the first season, it's still pretty, you know, cold susceptible. If I'm going to lose it, I might as well lose it right out of the gate and start over in spring.
Okay.
But the reason why you want to plant, often a lot of people, they talk about planting ornamentals like shrubs, trees, fruit trees in the fall, is because they're dormant. And when they're dormant, that means they're expending all energy on root growth. So they're not focused on branching, they're not focused on fruiting, flowering, nothing else. All they're worried about is establishment. So it is a great time to wait till the fall when you don't have to worry about watering, and then you potentially will be more successful. But if you plant in the fall, you know, most of these other items up here are going to be okay. It's cold, but if you're planting citrus or tropicals, just think ahead. You got all summer to make a plan of how you're going to protect it or give it your best shot.
And another thing, like since they're in pots, do I just need to throw them out to the full sun, or should I have them like under my back patio? Shaded.
I would say, like, you know, all these items want full sun, but if you can get them somewhere where they're going to get morning to midday, early afternoon sun in a container, that are going to be best. They'll be less stressed because you're going to have to water more and you're going to have to feed them more if they're in a container, just like anything else. So any of this stuff, like my berries, like I said, they thrive. I haven't watered my blackberries one time this year, other than Mother Nature. But also, they're under the shade though, so like the water usage is a lot different than any of my raised beds. So the one I have out here in the back that's in the middle of a raised bed, I got to water it at least once a week because it dries out faster and I don't have that moisture retention. So.
I was just looking at when I planted my fig trees. It was in the fall.
This is perfect time.
Yeah, that's when I planted.
What's this variety here, this variegated leaf one?
Oh, this is a Eureka variegated pink lemon.
Is that really pink, that you make pink lemonade out of?
When you cut it open, it's kind of got like a pink tint to it. It tastes the same, but it's a beautiful plant. It tastes really good. It's just as hardy as the other lemon. People just like when they see pink lemon or variegated, they get like, oh,
It's
this is
different. You want something that's.
Yeah, but it's unique and it's easy to grow. That's why I brought that one over there because for me, like too, just because it's a fruit tree, I know for some people it doesn't matter, but aesthetics do matter to me in a sense because aesthetics draw me, and if it's inviting and it doesn't have to look like pristine or like like Southern living, but if it's inviting, I'm more prone to like be immersed and like actually go there all the time and mess with it. So like different shapes and colors and textures are a big thing for me. So.
I have a question. I know you had said that the citrus trees should be planted to the south of the house. Do the other fruit trees need to be planted on a certain side?
No, just only the tropical type ones. Like if you planted like an avocado or any kind of citrus or a banana, technically is tropical, but again, you can plant a banana wherever you want. You can't kill it. So, but just things that are going to be freeze susceptible. The rest of it can be planted wherever.
So I was going to do a cinder block wall of sorts, and put that, make a little south wall.
Yeah.
And do that,
Yeah, I mean it's anyway.
Small, but something,
Especially if you're protecting, like even if you're protecting the lower portion,
totally.
keeping the wind off the graft, like the trunk could die up here, I could still clip it, and it's gonna have to grow again, but the tree is still alive versus not. So.
I had also I saw pomegranate up there.
Yep.
Do you grow pomegranates?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got I can't remember the variety. It's I think it's a native pomegranate, a Texas variety that I was given to. If anybody's ever seen the Texas Garden guy on Instagram or YouTube or wherever, we did a little event together in Beaumont a couple weeks ago, and he brought me one, and so I'm trying to figure out where I want to plant it.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see how it does. But you can absolutely grow pomegranate here. Any other questions?
Good question. If you move somewhere and you do have some sort of a citrus tree, a variety unknown, but it has extremely long thorns, is that normal?
The only tree that would be normal to have thorns would be like a lemon. But if you look at let's just do this for raspberries won't grow here. Doesn't get cold enough or enough chill hours. Trifoliate rootstock, if you look at it and it looks like this, where you have 3 leaves together.
And a thickening of the stem?
Yep, and then usually a long thorn will be on that stem. That's the rootstock.
Thank y'all very much. I have to leave.
No problem. Have a good day. But if you see like those 3 leaves like that, and the long thorns, it could be the rootstock, and that won't produce viable fruit. It'll produce sour fruit if it did, and that's what's on the bottom of these grafts. So this is a separate kind of tree, and a lot of times after a cold event, that rootstock takes over, basically like as the parent and anything that grows, and it could grow off the stem up here. That can happen. Just kind of like the internal, like, no, I was not the DNA is not the right, but the plant itself can revert back to the rootstock.
My neighbor's tree did that
Yeah.
between our yards. Now the lemons aren't as good.
Yeah.
But that big frost a few years ago, where we had a week of winter, I think the graft remained, then the original rootstock, but the one that was
Yeah.
grafted to it got real damaged, and now the lemons are shaped a little different and they're a little bitter.
It's probably the rootstock. So
Yeah.
that's a common problem.
Yeah.
People think their tree's still alive,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, it's still alive, but it's not fruiting. And I go back and look, it's like this tree is done. Like you're never gonna get what you planted here ever again.
Yeah.
You know.
It's for nests now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So sweet.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Got to see the picture with this. I'm fascinated by this variegated.
Yeah, it's really. I really like those.
Right.